Hello, everybody. So my name is Aaron Stanley. Welcome, and we're going to switch gears a little bit and do this in English. I'm obviously a gringo, but I speak Portuguese. I have a couple Portuguese panels later today as well. So we're going to do this particular panel in English. So I am a journalist. I've been covering crypto for almost 10 years now in different forms. Worked with CoinDesk, worked with some mainstream media publications in the US. I now have a publication called Brazil Crypto Report that is all about covering kind of the crypto industry here in Brazil in English language. So there's obviously a lot of things happening here as we've been talking about today. So my objective is to really try to communicate that to the rest of the world. I also have a podcast, a YouTube channel, and some other areas where I distribute content. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by Renan Kruger, who is representing Santander Brasil. And we're going to be talking a bit about Santander's approach to the digital asset world. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about here, so this is going to be a good conversation. Santander is obviously one of the largest banks in Brazil, one of the largest banks in the world. And they've been quite active in the kind of the digital asset realm for quite some time now, both Santander Brasil and Santander based out of Spain, right? The corporate headquarters. So maybe to kick off, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself and what your role is at Santander?
Thanks, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here. I started in crypto since 2016. By looking into the technology, smart contracts, training teams here in Brazil. I founded a blockchain tech company in Brazil called 1%, and I did some startups on the tokenization side for carbon credits, which I find this market for green assets amazing as well. And I think blockchain will enable it. For Brazil, it's a huge opportunity as well. And then I look into the markets, and I do believe crypto in regulated markets will be the next wave. So I joined the Santander team here in Brazil. I'm helping them to build the team and to training talents, because it's a very huge problem that we have around here in Brazil to find developers, to hire them, and to pay what Silicon Valley pays them. So my whole here in Santander Group is to build a team that is capable to work with this technology and build real scenarios for tokenized assets in a, let's say, regulated environment.
Great, thanks for that introduction. So to get started here, why don't you just tell us, kind of from a high level, how would you describe Santander Brasil's approach toward digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and then maybe we can drill down a bit into some of the more specific projects that you guys have been working on, particularly with the kind of the central bank and the Lift Lab and the digital real ecosystem. But how would you kind of describe the bank's overall approach to this emerging industry asset class, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, first the bank is studying a lot what is happening around the globe and is looking into crypto products and also into the regulation that is happening in Brazil, mostly on Real Digital and CVM. And we do think that the market will be hugely impacted by this technology in the sense of efficiency will change. Mostly for us, because we have headquarters, like you said, everywhere. So operations between countries will change a lot. And in Brazil, we have PIX, which is an amazing technology. But it doesn't replace what we are doing, because we are talking about only one asset, which is real is being transferred. What about we add DVP and other assets in a blockchain technology? That aspect, I think only blockchain can enable in Brazil. For example, I could pay another bank with another bond if I want, transferring let's say, real from one account to another, but the underlying asset that we are using is only real in PIX. What if we add another complexity and add another layer of assets that can be changed as reserve from bank to bank? And that kind of solution, I think we will see in the near future.
Great, and then let's dive into a bit more of these use cases and your involvement in some of the more official processes and initiatives that have been happening here. So Santander Brasil was a part of the Lift Lab, which is a financial innovation accelerator run by the central bank here and by Finasbac. With at least this most recent cohort that you were a part of, the objective was coming up with innovative new use cases that could be deployed in the digital real environment. And you guys actually came up with a really interesting use case involving kind of the tokenization of car titles and property titles and the transference of these. So maybe why don't you tell us a bit about that particular use case? What did you guys develop here?
Yeah, we made a DVP for cars and real estate on Lift Lab. We find out several challenges that we will face in the near future on the supply chain, because we will need every asset to be interoperable, I would say. And let's say the Detran is responsible for the car his registration in Brazil. They will have to join us, not only Santander, but the market, to create a solution where we can do that DVP. That's the challenge that we face. Obviously, it's so efficient from the model we have right now, what the technology brings to us, in the sense that what happens first? I pay you or you transfer the car first? And that kind of risk we will not face in the blockchain technology environment, because the DVP will occur at the time that we pay the car owner and the ownership of the car is transferred. That's what we learned, and that will bring a lot of trust in some transactions that we cannot apply nowadays.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to, the way you explained it was quite good in the sense that it's easy to envision or visualize how this use case could be applied to not just titles, but like any other type of asset, really. Where it's like, okay, am I thinking of almost like an OTC, transaction, right? Where it's like, okay, do they send me the funds first, or do I send them the funds first, or like an online payment? I buy something on Mercado Libre, but I'm paying for it first, but then I'm hoping that it shows up, right? But being able to basically settle these transactions in a way where the payment only is withdrawn when the service or the product is actually changes hands, and that can be done kind of instantaneously in one single transaction. Like, that's pretty innovative, right? And it's I think that you can extrapolate that to like any transaction you do in your daily life, right? Not just the car titling is obviously a very good one, because that's one that's maybe maybe it's a current pain point, right? But it's easy to see how this could apply to like any area of life, right?
And that gets worse when we talk about intangible assets.
Right.
We need more transparency and trust on that side. I do think, for example, green assets, which is a social convention, like carbon credits, they are not evolving because we don't have the real transparency that we need in that market. Blockchain will enable that as well. So for Brazil, for example, we have a huge opportunity for intangible assets that cannot be traded the way we need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this whole world of these environmental assets, carbon credits and things of this nature, is going to be, especially now that, at least in the US, starting next year, companies are going to have to provide more disclosures about types of carbon credits on their balance sheets and things of that nature. This is going to become a market that is providing the transparency into like, okay, what is this carbon credit actually, worth? Is one carbon credit worth it? Is a carbon credit issued by party A is valued the same as a carbon credit issued by carbon B or party B, et cetera, et cetera. Santander Brasil was one of the 14 entities accepted into the pilot program, Digital Real pilot program that the Banco Central is commencing this month. I'd like for you to explain a bit about how this is, maybe what was like even the application process. I know it's pretty competitive to get into this. What was it like to get accepted in to this program? And then now that you're in, what will you be doing exactly?
Yeah, first, I think Banco Central and regulators in Brazil are doing a great job, because we are probably the first country that are looking into that technology and saying, look, we may have to regulate that space, and we found the let's say the right players to take care of the financial assets and the securities, which is CVM and Banco Central. So I think they are evolving their teams to work with this technology, which is also important. They are here in the market. They are working together with us, and for that Real Digital Pilot, we will look at 4 assets: the CBDC, which is interchangeable between banks, not between consumer to consumer; the DVT, which is Depósito à Vista Tokenizado; and for other kind of payment institutions, we will call it Moeda Eletrônica Tokenizada, which was the reserve is 1-to-1. And to test the DVP on this platform, will buy federal bonds. That process, for example, is not very accessible right now, because the systems we have nowadays are very limited. For example, they can do, I think, 2 TPS. So blockchain.
2?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's not a lot, because it's not popular. Obviously, what comes first? What comes first? The system or the access to the asset? So I do believe this test will show us what we can do between those assets that we cannot do right now. For example, can we do a transfer between banks without transferring the reserve? Nowadays, no. Can we do with blockchain using another asset? I don't know. Maybe those questions will be raised. And the application for us, it was hard, because we had to prove that we had the knowledge to participate in the Real Digital Pilot, as we are with a global team inside Spain and building another one in Brazil. I think that was key to enter the Real Digital Pilot.
Well, I think Santander also has the advantage in the sense that the Santander, the European Santander has been experimenting with tokenizing bonds and debt and other types of assets for some time. I think even dating back to like maybe 2018 or 2019.
Yeah.
Maybe how is that institutional knowledge maybe translating into the Brazil context here?
We are always contacting the research team there, because they are studying every aspect from the technology for 5 years now. And they have tested around France and Germany. And what it brought to us is a knowledge about jurisdiction everywhere. For example, Germany is legalizing custody, is creating a regulation for custody. And for that, maybe in the future, we can use some company in Germany. Mm-hmm. And that info that help us to build our products. And also, they are studying edge technology like quantum computing, zero-knowledge proofs, and they can show us or can teach us here in Brazil how to deal with and select the best protocols, select the best technology, select what we are going to apply in Brazil operation.
Great. With that, I'd like to kind of segue into maybe a bit of a broader question around just managing, how do you promote innovation while obviously continuing to operate within like a heavy regulated sector that requires lots of risk management and things like that. And I think Brazil is very interesting in the sense that a lot of the pressure, there's a lot of pressure being applied from the central bank to the traditional banking system to utilize and maybe to utilize these experiment with these new technologies. And this is maybe pressure that is, maybe it's pressure, maybe it's an incentive, maybe it's a carrot and a stick, however you want to describe it. But I guess the question would be, to what extent is the central bank's forward thinking really helping institutions like yours to really immerse themselves in this technology, perhaps more than you might otherwise be like engaging with these types of innovations, if that makes sense?
That helps a lot us because we have a very complex compliance and risk team globally, and for what is regulated, it is very clear for us. We can apply in a, let's say, we can be very accurate on the solution that we are proposing for our products. In gray areas, we may have to find some idea or analogy for regulation in another country. And for example, that uncertainty that we have in SEC right now is what the banks, whenever Banco Central and CVM is not regulating assets or products, we have the same. So probably the decision will be no for the compliance team. When we have the Banco Central saying, look, we are going to test Real Digital, we are going to test DVP between federal bonds and Real Tokenizado, for example, it's very clear. It's different. So it helps a lot.
And then piggybacking off of that, what do you see as being the big impacts that this digital real ecosystem, and I'm speaking of digital real not just in terms of, it's not just the CBDC, that's not just the actual currency itself, but this entire ecosystem of kind of tokenizing the financial system that the central bank has been talking so much about. How do you see all of this really changing the way that the Brazilian banking system operates, even to the customer level, right, to the end user level, who may not even understand anything about blockchain, or may not even understand what the digital real even is? But how does this ultimately impact all of the different stakeholders in the banking system here?
First, I think the relation between banks will be a little bit different on this technology because, as I said, I don't think only reserves will be in CBDCs or reais. I think other assets will be transferred in the future. The relation between investors and assets right now are very limited in some space, like debentures or Brazilian bonds for companies are not very accessible for the consumer. Those types of investments will be more transparent and more accessible, in my opinion, in the future. And the last but not least, I think the real impact will be whenever we have a more, let's say, equalized or regulation between countries. You can imagine that we have operations in Chile, Argentina, Spain, and everywhere else. Some are big, some are not that big, but the relation between headquarters in countries for assets will be very different. Nowadays we use SWIFT. It takes 5 days or something. That impact is very different. I don't think PIX will die. PIX will continue because it's very fast. But other complex applications involving not only real and other assets will happen. And that will be the use case for blockchain technology.
And then how do you see PIX and the digital real the digital real ecosystem here interoperating? I know this is a question that gets asked a lot, where like people are like, well, we already have PIX, so why do we need a digital real? But how does that stack sort of come together?
Yeah, I believe it will. Every consumer will have two kinds of accounts in their bank app, like the digital account for tokenized assets, including real, and their traditional account for some time. I don't believe PIX will die or the traditional account will die. We are talking about legacy systems that are in place since the 80s, and then I don't think it will be replaced like that. I do believe we will have two worlds connecting together or talking together, and one will be used probably for more complex applications and complex assets, and other will be used to transfer money, for example. And every investor in Brazil will have investments in the traditional banking or legacy system and in digital accounts, in my opinion.
Great. And then with the question of financial inclusion, right? This is obviously one of the narratives that you hear being advanced by blockchain, cryptocurrency proponents. And I would just like your thoughts on this in this kind of this more open, democratized digital real ecosystem. What do you see as the potential for this technology to really perhaps bring banking services or financial services to underreached populations here in Brazil, or perhaps providing additional services that folks maybe they already have an account with, like a new bank or something, but they don't really have any other access to credit or other types of more advanced products. But what do you see as the potential here?
Yeah, that's a very complex situation. I don't think the technology will have a lot on that side. It can enable, but it cannot change. I do think we need another type of products, a different credit score system. We need microloans. We need social initiatives inside favelas, for example, in Brazil. The technology can enable it, but in that side, I really think we need to change the mindset. It's not about only putting on blockchain some assets or some accounts, but it's the way the financial system is structured right now that is preventing some part of the population to have access to financial systems. And I do believe it will be a step towards that access, but we need to change the way we work with our credit systems, our loan systems, our social incentives to like if we use game theory like we use for Bitcoin, which we know a lot, to create access. And even some initiatives like Celo blockchain, they have universal income. That will be what can change the status. And together with Real Digital, we will see interoperability in these markets, in my opinion.
That's interesting. I think that's that's a good response, because it's a very honest response, right? Because I think a lot of times you hear, even at conferences like this, people putting forward this kind of financial inclusion, like blockchain as this like magic, it's like you wave a magic wand and all of a sudden everybody has access to financial services. And it's just not really, like, it's a piece of the puzzle, right? But there's a lot of other more structural factors that still need to be addressed, like factors that you had mentioned that go into this. I'm not entirely sure how much time we have left. I'm waiting for a sign, but it's time for a couple more questions, I presume. Maybe on this note of kind of financial education, are there any initiatives that Santander is undertaking to kind of educate customers or potential customers just about this, some of these new functionalities that you're building, or about maybe the digital asset ecosystem in general?
That's an important point that we are looking into creating, let's say, crypto products or tokenized products. We may have to establish a very efficient way to educate people that don't know what is Bitcoin, for example, or what is a tokenized asset, what that token represents in real. Sometimes it's the asset, sometimes it's a digital representation of the actual asset on the traditional systems like CVM or B3. So that's an aspect that we are working a lot into the education. And another point that we are working is not about the consumer itself, but the talent that we need to build this new economy. So in my area, for example, I have tech courses that we are doing because we cannot find developers that know, for example, Solidity. So we are teaching them how to build smart contracts, how this technology change the way you have to think about technology architecture. You cannot do like you do a Java application on chain, on a public blockchain or on a private blockchain. It's the mindset is very different. That's what we are working on. First, to educate the consumer. Second, to create talent to build our applications.
Yeah, if we could double click on the talent question really quick, I'd be quite interested in hearing your thoughts on this. You mentioned a few of the pain points, which is there's maybe just not enough talent generally, and the talent that is here that is good, you can't really pay them as much as somebody from Silicon Valley or and especially during the bull market. I mean, if you're a Solidity developer, that's a pretty nice salary. Like, somebody will be lining up to hire you, right? But how do you maybe kind of reconcile this? Like, what type of maybe pipeline do you have to build to really create this, a sufficient pool of talent? Is it really a question of trying to onboard more like Web 2 developers into Web 3, or is it really more just doing more engagement at places like USP here, trying to just sort of evangelize, like say, hey, there's a lot of opportunity here, and we need people, and what's your strategy here?
Yeah, the solution, I've been working on this since 2017 because we were the first teams in Brazil to tokenize things, and we had to teach every developer that worked with us. So what I believe is we may have to teach them not only into the language itself, but in the theories that were used to build Bitcoin, for example. Why we are talking about distributed systems, why we are talking about game theory, incentivizing people to do the good thing, not the bad thing. So a very good preparation for me, and we are creating a roadmap. Every people that engage in our team is going through it, is to understand the history of a blockchain, how it works, why we are using cryptography like we are using, why we are going to look into privacy in the next years, why zero knowledge will be one of the major technologies that we may have to apply in a private sector, like a central bank is looking into the real digital. So my strategy is work on the business side of it, not only technology. For example, for a node developer, it's very easy to learn Solidity, but the concepts behind proof of work, proof of stake, consensus mechanisms, and other aspects are very difficult to understand. Those are the aspects that we are focusing on.
Great. We're about out of time here, but maybe to wrap up, would just like some final thoughts from you on maybe just what to expect out of Santander and just maybe the Brazil digital asset ecosystem generally moving ahead here, and then how can folks get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Yeah, thank you for this conversation. I think we have a unique opportunity here in Brazil. We are front-running all the other countries that are struggling to define the regulations. So we have a huge opportunity to take part of this economy and export our findings, our good solutions, and learn from our mistakes as well. Because, for example, the Real Digital Pilot will be not in production, so we can test. I do believe that in the near future or next year, we will see a lot of assets and regulated assets being tokenized. And those kind of DeFi applications will be the next wave, but not only for crypto asset or not crypto native assets, for regulated assets as well. And for everyone that wants to connect with me, go on LinkedIn, Renan Kruger, and just send a message, we can talk.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Renan, for your time. And thank you so much to the Digital Finance Brasil team for hosting us here. And thanks everyone here for listening.
Okay, thank you, Renan and Aaron. Thank you.